everyone, I am Alisha Chandna and I am the biology faculty. We will start our new journey of learning biology. Biology is very interesting subject and very easy too. So we are going to discuss here our first unit of biology, that is the living organism. In this the living organism, we will classify and we will learn each organisms. So to learn the organism, we first have to classify them into their respective kingdoms. So based on this scenario, we this unit comprises of 4 chapters. The first one is the living world, the second one is the biodiversity, the third one is the plant kingdom, and the fourth one is the animal kingdom. Now I will show you some topics which we will discuss in this lecture. So the first thing we are going to discuss here is what is living. According to you guys, what is living? The next thing we will discuss is diversity. For you guys, what is living? We can say that anything which respire or anything which locate or can do movement is living. But what about the plants? They cannot do such movement, but they are living things. So we will discuss these type of things in this chapter. To know about the living, we must know about the diversity. So according to you guys, what is diversity? Diversity is the number of organism or the types of organism that is present in our planet. To know about the organism or to know about the diversity, it is practically impossible to learn each and every organism that is present in our planet, as its number is very large. So to learn about the diversity, we have to classify that organism into their respective class, order. We will learn this thing later on. So to know about the diversity, we have to determine taxonomy and systematics. These terms are very new to you, the taxonomy, the systematics, diversity. I know these are very new to things to you. I will explain each and everything in detail. So what is taxonomy? It is the other word we use for the categorization or the categories. Categories is in the biological term in this unit is termed as the taxonomy. So the next thing we will discuss is and the systematics. Systematic is the part of the taxonomy. To learn about the organism or the diversity, we must first have to identify that organism. Which is this organism, or what is the type of this organism? We have to identify that. Then moving on, we have to nomenclate them. What is nomenclature? In all the languages, suppose we are I am from Haryana, so I am using basically Hindi. So in Hindi I am using as cow as guy, but in Tamil or in South you can use some other language. So it is very difficult to identify or to say which organism is this. So for this problem, we have used this nomenclature which would be accepted all over the world. We would give a proper name, a biological name to that organism which will be accepted all over the world. So it should be very easy to us. After the identification and the nomenclature thing, we will move to the classification. Firstly, we will identify that organism, then we will nomenclate them, and then we will classify them into their respective orders. Next thing we will discuss is the nomenclature. There are 2 types of nomenclature, the binomial and the trinomial one. The binomial is a 2-word classification and the trinomial is a 3-word classification. So the next thing we will discuss is the taxonomical categories. I would give an example here. Suppose you ask from me that from where I belong. I say India. In India, I belong to Haryana. And in Haryana I belong to in that city or something. So I have to give proper thing in India, then from state, then from city, then from district. So it is an order or it is the categorization. Here in the taxonomic categories also we will categorize in order. For example, in the taxonomical categories, the first category is the kingdom, and for the in the kingdom the subdivision is the class, order, phylum, etc., etc. So these are the taxonomical categories. The next one is the taxonomical tools, that is the tools required for the taxonomy. Here I am giving some examples. Suppose I am a barber, and so I would need some tools for cutting my hairs. For example, I need some scissor, some trimmer, etc, etc. So that scissor and that trimmer are the tools which is required for barber to cut to cut the hairs. In this case also, for the taxonomical categories, we need some tools which will help them to categorize. So some of the taxonomical tools are the herbarium, the zoos, biological parks, etc, etc, museums, etc. So now we will discuss our first topic, what the characteristics of living things. Here are the characteristics of living things through which we can understand by which method we can say that anything is living or non-living. The important characteristics are the growth and the first one is the growth and development. Here we will discuss that growth and development is the vital characteristics of living organism. The next thing we will discuss about the reproduce, that the living organism reproduce. And the next thing we will discuss is heredity of our traits, that the heredity of traits are take place in the living organisms only. Or the homeostasis. Homeostasis is the stable condition of our body. And the metabolism. Metabolism is the number of chemical reaction that is going in our body. The next thing is the cellular organization, that the living organisms are made up from cells to organs. Here are the proper organization. And the last thing is the respond to the environment, that the living thing respond to the environment. We will discuss each and every characteristics of living things in detail by one. But these all are the very important characteristics of living things, whereas these are also the characteristics, that is the respiration. Living organism respire, they excrete, they undergo cell division, they have their proper shape, they respond to stimuli. These are the other characteristics which are important, but these are very important characteristics, growth and all these things. So now we will discuss each and every characteristics of living. We will start by the growth. So what is growth? Growth is basically the permanent and the irreversible change that take place in the cell. It is the irreversible change and the permanent one too. We can say that growth is increase in mass or number of individual or cells. It is basically increase in the mass or the number of cells. These increase in mass and number, these two are the very important characteristics which we say in the living organisms. We can say that growth is an intrinsic property. They depend on other things, that is the mass or the number. That is why it is an intrinsic property. And growth only occurs when the rate of anabolism is higher than the rate of catabolism. So according to you guys, what is anabolism and what is catabolism? Anabolism is the production of complex molecules from the simple molecules, or the catabolism is the breakdown of complex molecules into the simpler one. So these two are the anabolism and the catabolism. These are the types of the metabolisms. And growth only occurs when the rate of anabolism is higher than the rate of the catabolism. So in the multicellular organism, the growth takes place. In plants, it takes place as a cell division. By the cell division in plants, growth takes place. But it cannot occur everywhere. There is a proper location in plants in which the growth takes place. In the plants, the growth takes place at proper location, that is the meristematic tissue, and in the plant it can take their whole life, that the plant can do the growth throughout their lives. There is an animal, the growth cannot occur throughout their life. They have their proper age by which they can grow. But the cell division occurs for the maintenance. For example, if we have some replacements of tissue, then the cell division will take place. But the growth will take place for a certain age only. Whereas in the unicellular organisms, the growth is also the mode for the reproduction also. That is why they both are the mutually inclusive events. Whereas in the multicellular organisms, these are the mutually exclusive. That is, they occur in the multicellular. They cannot occur simultaneously. Whereas in the unicellular, it can occur simultaneously. We can here see the growth in the unicellular organism. That here you can see here the cytoplasm and nucleus takes place. It enters to the cell cycle through the cell division. Here the nucleus are condensed. Now they are performing the cell cycle, the G1 phase, then the G2 phase, and they undergo mitosis and the cytokinesis, where the two daughter cells will form. The cell division will take place and two daughter cells will form. The next thing we will discuss is what is the difference of growth in the living things and the non-living things. We can also see that in the non-living things also there is increase in mass. We can see that in the mountains or the stones, the mountains can grow. We can see the growth in the mountains or in the crystals or in the sand dunes. This can occur, but that does not mean that it is a living thing. It occurred due to the accumulation of material at the surface. Does it occur externally? So here the growth takes place externally and it is due to the accumulation at the surface, whereas in the living organisms the growth takes place internally or by the building of the material takes place inside our body. That is, the growth in the living organism takes internally, whereas in the non-living things the increase of size takes place externally. That is the major difference in the growth of the living thing and the non-living object. And we can and we have I have said it earlier also that growth is irreversible change and the permanent change which is take place in the living organisms. The next property which we are going to discuss is the reproduction. So what is reproduction? Reproduction is basically the ability to produce new individual of our types. It is of two types. There are two types of reproduction through which organisms can produce a new individual. The first one is the sexual reproduction and the other one is the asexual reproduction. So we will discuss sexual and asexual and we will compare both. In the sexual reproduction, the two parents are required for the reproduction, whereas in the asexual reproduction, only one parent is required. In the sexual reproduction, we can see here that we require a male gamete, that is a sperm, and we need a female gamete, that is an egg, and they both fuse together and perform fertilization to form a zygote. Whereas in the asexual reproduction, only a single parent can make a copy of its organism. Here, here in the sexual reproduction, the offspring which is produced is genetically and morphologically different, somewhat different from their parents. Whereas in the asexual reproduction, as it require only one parent, so it is the clone of its parent. That is, it is the exact copy of its parents. And sexual reproduction can be used by humans and mammals, whereas the asexual reproduction take place by the yeast, sponges and bacteria. In the sexual reproduction, we can produce babies of genetically different one, and we can see that we can increase the survival rate of the population. But we have one problem in the sexual reproduction, that it requires a lot of time and effort in different animals or in different organism. There is different time for reproduction, whereas in the asexual reproduction they can do reproduction by very less time, and it can be used by the sponges, yeast and bacteria.